A subtle rain scratched across the kitchen window the evening everything in Artem's life cracked wide open. He'd just come home from work, another long day balancing budgets, meetings, and the rhythm of his dependable life. The house smelled faintly of jasmine tea, the lights dim, the atmosphere calm. Too calm. A strange tremor ran through him, an instinct he couldn't place. He set down his keys, loosened his tie, and walked down the hall toward the bedroom where Aline often read in the evenings. But before he reached the door, a soft vibration echoed from her phone on the console table. He never checked her phone. They had built their relationship on something he used to think was unbreakable trust. But the sound came again, another message, then another, and a preview flashed across the screen. He didn't mean to look. He didn't even want to look. But his eyes moved before he could stop them. Still thinking about last night. Miss your touch already. Can't wait to see you again, Aline. Each word sliced him open. The house suddenly felt wrong. Too quiet, too staged, like a theater set meant to trick him into believing his life was intact. His breathing grew shallow as he picked up the phone. The messages scrolled upward, revealing a thread of intimacy so deep, so detailed, there was no room for doubt. Aline had not just cheated. She had lived another life behind his back. His hand trembled, but he didn't drop the phone. Instead, he placed it exactly where he found it and walked to the living room. His mind felt like glass shattered in slow motion, every piece reflecting something different: disbelief, pain, anger, humiliation. He sat down. The clock ticked. The rain continued. He waited. When Aline arrived home an hour later, she hummed a tune as if nothing in the world was wrong. She kissed him lightly on the cheek, too lightly, like someone performing affection rather than feeling it. He said nothing. If he spoke now, the dam would burst. Instead, he watched her move around the kitchen, smiling, humming, cooking. This woman, the one he had trusted with every vulnerable part of himself, was living a lie with such ease. Later that night, while she slept beside him, Artem lay awake staring at the ceiling. A hollow ache spread slowly through his chest. He tried to rationalize, to deny, to hope this was somehow a misunderstanding. But the truth was too precise, too sharp. His life had been split into before and after. The next morning, Artem left early. He walked through the city without direction, letting the cold wind sting his face, grounding him in the reality he didn't want. His thoughts tangled. Why? Was something missing? How long had this been happening? Each question echoed without answer. He didn't tell anyone, not his brother, not his closest friends. Shame wrapped around him like a heavy coat. For days he functioned on autopilot: work, home, forced conversations, mechanical smiles. Aline occasionally sensed that something in him had shifted, but she attributed it to stress. Stress was a convenient shield to hide behind. He watched her. He listened. He waited. He felt like a stranger in his own life, silent, wounded, observing the woman he loved laughing, chatting, planning weekend trips. She was still the same Aline he had married, or perhaps this version was the real one, and he had simply been blind. One night, sitting alone in his office, Artem felt a clarity settle on him, cold and sharp. He could confront her. He could scream, accuse, break things. He could leave immediately. But that would give her an escape, an easy way out where she could twist the story, paint him as overreactive, manipulate the narrative socially, emotionally, even legally. He wanted the truth to be undeniable. He wanted her mask to crack. He wanted her to understand, not through cruelty, not through pain inflicted, but through consequences she could not sidestep. He didn't want revenge born of violence. He wanted justice born of clarity. And so he began observing closely her habits, her inconsistencies, the lies she told casually, the evenings she claimed she needed alone time, the sudden work emergencies. He subtly checked phone bills, bank statements, travel routes. He never hacked, never invaded illegally, just connected the dots she had carelessly scattered. With every discovery, he felt less love and more distance. The fog of grief slowly transformed into purpose. Weeks passed. A plan took shape. It wasn't about punishment. It was about revelation. He would orchestrate a situation in which her own actions would expose her, not only to him, but to the people she valued. A clean, elegant fracture in the illusion she had built. And when the moment arrived, he would walk away with dignity, not bitterness. But first, he needed confirmation. Undeniable, irrefutable, something that would force her to confront what she'd done rather than hide behind rehearsed excuses. That opportunity arrived sooner than he expected. One evening, Aline announced she would spend the weekend visiting her sister. Artem nodded, pretending not to notice the slight tremor in her voice, but he knew her sister was abroad that week. He didn't follow her. He didn't confront her. Instead, he made arrangements, quiet ones, conversations with a few key people in their social circle, subtle, careful questions at work, a small gathering planned for Sunday afternoon with people Aline respected deeply. He knew exactly what she'd return from, and he knew exactly how to let the truth bloom in the open. But as he prepared everything, something unexpected happened. He realized he wasn't doing this because he wanted her to suffer. He was doing it because he wanted closure. Real closure, where the truth is undeniable, where lies collapse under their own weight, where he could walk away without the burden of doubt. Still, the pain lingered. Betrayal echoes long after the first break. But Artem was learning to stand again. And soon, Aline would face the truth she had so carefully avoided. The Friday morning Aline left for her so-called weekend with her sister, Artem stood by the window and watched her car disappear down the street. She waved at him with a bright, casual smile, too casual, the kind of smile rehearsed to look natural. He lifted his hand in response, though the gesture felt heavy, almost mechanical. When she turned the corner, his expression shifted. No sadness. No anger. Just focus. He sat at the kitchen table, letting the silence of the empty house fill him. This was the first moment in weeks where he could breathe without pretending. He closed his eyes and exhaled slowly, grounding himself. The plan was already in motion, but now he needed to refine it, shape the edges, strengthen the foundation. He didn't want chaos, he wanted clarity. He didn't want destruction, he wanted truth. And the truth was coming. That afternoon Artem returned to the office. Not because he had work to do, but because he needed the neutral environment, a space that didn't smell like her perfume, didn't echo with their shared memories. He sat at his desk, staring at the spreadsheet on his monitor while his thoughts drifted far from numbers. He replayed the last conversations he'd overheard, her soft giggles behind the bathroom door, the sudden silences when he entered a room, the excuses of being tired or stressed. Each moment now gleamed with painful clarity. It wasn't that she didn't love him. It was that she loved the thrill more. Later that day, Artem met with two close friends for coffee, people whose discretion was absolute. They had known him for more than a decade and could read him without words. When he told them he wanted to host a small Sunday gathering, they didn't ask questions. They simply nodded. One of them, Kirill, placed a hand on Artem's shoulder. "You sure you want to do this?" Artem gave a calm, steady nod. "I'm sure. I need the truth to speak for itself." Kirill nodded back. No more questions. Meanwhile, Aline's weekend unfolded exactly as Artem suspected, not at her sister's house, but in a boutique hotel 2 districts away. He didn't follow her there. He didn't need to. The groundwork he'd laid over the past few weeks gave him more than enough insight into her patterns. He imagined her laughing with her lover, sipping wine, feeling safe in the bubble of lies she had woven. The thought still hurt, deep, cold, and echoing, but now the hurt felt distant, managed, contained. He no longer felt like a man drowning in betrayal. He felt like a man watching a fire that had already burned its worst. Saturday night arrived quietly. Artem packed away the last documents he needed: financial statements, shared account logs, travel records, all of them perfectly legal and perfectly revealing. Not damning, but illuminating. He didn't want to destroy her. He simply wanted her to be seen as she truly was. The gathering wasn't large, just people who mattered to both of them. Friends, colleagues, a few family members. People Aline had always wanted to impress, whose respect she valued. They would all be at the house Sunday afternoon. And she didn't know. On Sunday morning, Artem made breakfast for himself, something simple: eggs, toast, coffee. As he ate, the house felt eerily quiet but not suffocating. The ache in his chest was still there, but it had softened, like a bruise that no longer throbbed. He checked the clock. Aline would be home in about an hour. He cleaned the living room, arranged the documents neatly in a drawer he could access quickly. He didn't plan to ambush her with evidence. He had something more elegant in mind. The truth will reveal itself, he thought. It always does. At 11:47 a.m., he heard the familiar sound of her car pulling into the driveway. His pulse quickened slightly, but he steadied himself. The front door opened. Artem, her voice carried its usual warmth. "I'm home." He met her in the hallway. She looked radiant, fresh, rested, almost glowing. Guilt didn't show on her face. She had become an expert at hiding it. "Welcome back," Artem said calmly. She leaned in to kiss him, and he allowed it. The taste of her perfume lingered in the air as she pulled away. "How was your sister?" "Oh, she's fine. We had such a lovely time." She began removing her coat. There it was. The lie so smooth, so confident. Artem nodded. "Good to hear." For a brief moment, her smile faltered. She sensed something, not enough to alarm her, but enough to make her tilt her head slightly. "Is everything okay?" "Yes," Artem said. "People will be here soon." "People?" Her brows knitted in confusion. "We're hosting a small get-together today. I told you earlier this week, remember?" He hadn't. But she wouldn't admit she didn't remember. It would expose her. "Oh, right," she said quickly. "Yes, of course, I must have forgotten." He watched her move around the house with growing tension. She sensed something was off, like an animal feeling the first tremors of an approaching storm. By the time guests began arriving, Aline had composed herself. She wore a flawless smile, greeted everyone warmly, chatted with ease. But Artem could see the subtle stiffness in her posture, the flickers of uncertainty in her eyes. She was performing, not relaxing. As the group settled, 10 people in total, Artem waited for the moment when conversations quieted, when the attention turned naturally toward him. He didn't have to force it. He just had to wait. And then it came. A colleague asked about their recent trip, one Aline had claimed they took together, but which Artem knew she had taken alone with her lover. The room stilled for a fraction of a second. Aline's smile wavered. Artem spoke first. "We didn't take that trip together," he said calmly. Aline turned to him sharply. "What do you mean, of course we?" "No," Artem interrupted gently, "we didn't, and I think it's time we stop pretending." The silence in the room deepened, becoming something heavy and electric. Aline's eyes widened. "Artem, what are you doing?" "What should have been done months ago." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse. He didn't shame. He simply told the truth. He spoke about the late-night messages he'd accidentally discovered, about the inconsistencies that followed, about the weekends, the excuses, the emotional distance she had created. Every word was calm, measured, unembellished. Facts, not fire. The guests listened in stunned silence. none of them moving. Aline's face drained of color. Artem, please, not here, not now, she whispered, trembling. Why not? He replied softly. You built the lie publicly. It's only fair the truth be given the same space. He retrieved the folder from the drawer and placed it gently on the coffee table. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. Its presence alone was enough. Aline stared at it as if it were a ticking bomb. Everyone here cares about us, Artem continued. They deserve to know what actually happened before rumors do the telling. Aline shook her head, tears welling. You're humiliating me. No, Artem said, still calm. You did that when you chose deceit over honesty. His voice wasn't cold. It was sad and resolute. Her tears broke then, spilling freely down her cheeks. She tried to speak, tried to explain, but the words tangled in her throat. The room didn't judge her aloud, but the silence was devastating. She looked small, exposed, unmasked. And Artem felt something unexpected rising in his chest. Not satisfaction, not triumph. Relief. A deep, releasing relief. The truth was finally out. And he no longer carried it alone. The gathering ended quietly. No one stayed long. People hugged Artem, offered silent support. Aline retreated to the bedroom, unable to face anyone. When the last guest left, Artem stood in the empty doorway of the living room, breathing deeply. He felt lighter, clearer. But the story wasn't finished. There was one final step, one last piece of elegant closure he needed before walking away completely. And that step would come tomorrow. The house was unbearably quiet that night, so quiet Artem could hear the faint ticking of the clock in the hallway as if it were inside his own chest. The storm of the afternoon had settled into an almost perfect stillness. No more whispers behind doors, no more questions unanswered. Truth had swept through the rooms like a cold wind, leaving everything stripped bare. Aline remained in the bedroom for hours, the door shut, her sobs faint but unmistakable. Artem didn't approach. He didn't comfort her. He didn't argue. There was nothing left to discuss. Words had already done their part. He sat on the couch, staring at the fading light outside the window. The sky was a muddy violet. City lights flickered alive in the distance. For the first time in months, his thoughts were strangely organized, quiet, almost peaceful. He had imagined this moment differently. He had pictured confrontation, shouting, maybe even rage. But the calmness had surprised him. It felt like a wound finally sealing shut. When Aline finally emerged from the bedroom, her steps were soft, tentative. Her eyes were swollen, her expression raw. Artem, she whispered, but her voice cracked. Can we talk? Artem didn't look at her immediately. He closed the folder on the table and placed it aside before he finally lifted his gaze. She looked like someone who had aged 10 years in an afternoon. Vulnerable, fragile, stripped of all pretense. What do you want to say? Artem asked quietly. She approached slowly as though afraid he might break. I'm sorry. I lost myself. I made mistakes. I didn't want to hurt you. He held her gaze, unblinking. You didn't just hurt me. You betrayed the life we built together. I know, her voice trembled, but I can fix it, I can. No, he said, not unkindly but with finality. This isn't something that can be fixed. Her breath hitched. Please, please don't leave me. Artem sighed softly. It startled even him how gentle the sound was. Aline, I'm not leaving out of anger. I'm leaving because staying would mean lying to myself. She crumpled into a chair, covering her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook with soundless sobs. Artem stood. For the first time in months he felt steady, grounded. You should rest, he said. We'll talk tomorrow. But she didn't hear him. Her sobs grew louder, echoing through the hollow spaces of the house, the same house where they had once laughed, dreamed, whispered in the dark. Now it felt like a museum of a love that no longer existed. Artem walked out of the room, leaving her with her grief. He didn't hate her. That was the strangest part. The anger had dissolved long ago, replaced by an almost painful clarity. He slept on the couch that night. The next morning, Aline sat at the kitchen table when he entered, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. She looked exhausted, as if she hadn't slept at all. "Arte ya em," she whispered. "Please listen. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't plan it. It just happened." He poured himself a glass of water, the sound unusually loud in the quiet kitchen. "Aline," he said calmly, "affairs don't just happen. Lies don't just happen. You made decisions, one after another." She closed her eyes in defeat. "I'm not trying to punish you," he continued. "I'm trying to free myself." She looked up sharply. "Free yourself from me?" "Yes." The silence between them stretched thin like glass. "I'll move out tomorrow," he said. "You can stay here until we settle everything legally." The shock rippled across her face. "Tomorrow, you're just walking away." "No," Artem replied gently. "I walked away months ago. Yesterday was just the moment I finally admitted it." She covered her mouth as fresh tears spilled out. But Artem didn't waver. The final step of his clean revenge. He didn't yell. He didn't insult her. He didn't hurt her. His revenge was never about cruelty. It was about truth and consequences. He had already removed his belongings from their shared accounts, split savings cleanly, secured his assets, everything completely legal, transparent, and ethical. He also filed for divorce, quietly, efficiently, without theatrics. But there was one more thing he had to do. Not out of spite, but out of justice. Aline's lover was married, something she had conveniently overlooked. Artem found the number of the man's wife. He thought long and hard about whether to call. Not to destroy someone's life, but to give her the truth he wished he had received earlier. He dialed. The line rang twice. A soft voice answered, "Hello." Artem took a deep breath. "My name is Artem," he said quietly. "You don't know me, but I believe we both deserve honesty." There was a long silence on the other end as he explained, without embellishment, without cruelty. Just facts. Simple, clear facts. When he finished, the woman didn't scream or cry. She just inhaled sharply, as if someone had pulled the world out from under her feet. "Thank you," she whispered. "No one ever tells the truth anymore." Artem closed his eyes. "I'm sorry." "So am I," she said, "for both of us." He hung up. The final thread had been cut. Aline's collapse. When he returned home, Aline sat on the staircase, her face pale as death. "You told her," she said, her voice trembling. "Yes." Her breath shuddered. "Do you hate me that much?" "No," he answered softly. "If I hated you, I would have let your lies continue." She stared at him, stunned, because she finally understood. His revenge wasn't designed to hurt her. It was designed to stop the lies everywhere they reached. She covered her face again, breaking apart in quiet sobs. And Artem walked past her with a steady calmness that came from a single truth. This chapter was ending, and he was already stepping beyond it. Morning sunlight filtered gently through the curtains, throwing long pale stripes across the living room floor. Artem stood in the doorway, a packed duffel bag at his feet. It wasn't a dramatic leaving. No slammed doors, no shouted goodbyes, just a quiet closing chapter. Aline appeared at the end of the hallway, still wearing the same clothes from last night, as if she hadn't moved. Her face was swollen from hours of tears, her hair tangled, her expression hollow. "So you're really going?" she whispered. Artem nodded, "Yes." She approached slowly, like someone afraid to touch a fragile glass that might shatter upon contact. "I don't know how to fix this," she said, her voice thin. "I don't know how to live with what I did." He watched her for a moment. Once, those words would have broken him. Now they only echoed faintly in the walls of a home that no longer felt like his. "You don't have to fix anything for me," he replied gently. "Just be honest with yourself, with others, that's all." Aline looked down at her hands. "I never meant for it to go this far. Her voice cracked. "I miss who we used to be." "We can both miss it," Artem said, "but that doesn't bring it back." For a moment, the two of them simply stood there, two people who once shared everything and now shared nothing but the ruins of a promise. Aline reached out, as if to take his hand, but stopped midway, realizing the gesture no longer belonged between them. "Goodbye, Aline," Artem said, his voice steady, almost warm. "Goodbye, Artem," she whispered, her eyes filling again. "I'm so sorry." He didn't respond. Some apologies aren't meant to be answered. He picked up his bag, walked to the door, and stepped outside into the crisp air of a new morning. The door clicked shut behind him, soft but final. A new beginning. Artem didn't go far at first. He rented a small apartment across the city, nothing fancy, just enough space to breathe. The walls were bare, the rooms quiet, but it felt real, uncontaminated, his. He spent the first night there sitting on the balcony with a cup of tea, watching the traffic blur below him. The world moved on, indifferent to heartbreak. Somehow, that indifference felt comforting. It meant life wouldn't pause for his pain. It meant he could start again. In the following days, he settled into routines. He worked. He took long walks. He exercised. He cooked simple meals. Slowly, painfully, his mind began to unclench from the tight fist of betrayal. His friends checked in often, sometimes stopping by with wine or food, sometimes just to sit with him in silence. They didn't pity him. They respected him for the restraint he showed, for the dignity he kept, for the truth he defended. And gradually, Artem noticed something changing inside him. The anger was gone. The grief had softened. What remained was space, room for new things, new people, new hopes. One evening, Kirill asked him, "Do you regret how you did it?" Artem shook his head. No, she lived behind a mask for too long. It was time she faced herself. "And you?" Kirill asked gently. Artem took a long breath. "I'm finally facing myself too." Meanwhile, Aline. While Artem rebuilt his life in quiet calm, Aline found herself in the center of a storm she had created. Her lover's marriage collapsed within days. His wife exposed everything to mutual friends, to their workplace, to their families. Suddenly, their secret romance became a cautionary tale whispered behind closed doors. Aline's professional life took a hit as well. The colleagues who learned the truth, some of whom had been at the gathering, distanced themselves, not out of cruelty but out of broken trust. She had always cultivated an image of reliability, loyalty, integrity. Now that image cracked like shattered porcelain. And alone in the house that once felt warm, she felt every inch of the silence Artem had left behind. Every cup she lifted reminded her of breakfasts together. Every corner reminded her of a joke they once shared. Every room echoed with absence. His calmness during the confrontation haunted her the most. She had expected rage, expected accusation, chaos, or slammed doors. Instead, she had been faced with something far heavier: grace and consequence. For the first time, she truly saw the depth of what she had lost. Not just a husband, not just a partner, but the only person who ever loved her with unwavering sincerity. Now that sincerity was gone, and she could never get it back. Months later, spring arrived, life grew brighter, Artem felt stronger. He started attending a community writing group on Wednesdays, a small gathering of people who wrote stories, poetry, memoirs. He didn't know why he walked through that door the first time. Maybe because he wanted to understand the story he had lived. At one meeting, he read a passage about truth, how it can break and heal at the same time. When he finished, a woman named Emma approached him. She had kind eyes, soft curls, and an empathetic smile that didn't pry. "That was beautiful," she said gently. "It sounded like someone who survived something hard." Artem hesitated, then nodded. "I suppose I did." Emma didn't ask for details. She didn't need to. She sensed the boundaries and respected them. Over the next few weeks, they talked after meetings, at first about writing, then about life, then about nothing and everything. There was no spark, not yet. No rush, no expectations. Just comfort and peace. Things Artem hadn't felt in a long time. The final release. One warm evening, Artem found himself back near the old house, not intentionally. His walk had simply taken him past familiar streets. He paused across the road, looking at the windows glowing softly in the dusk. He felt nothing. No pain. No longing. No fury. Just quiet understanding. A line appeared in the doorway for a brief moment, stepping outside to check the mailbox. She didn't see him. Her posture was tired, her movements slow. She looked smaller somehow. For a fleeting second, Artem felt a pang of human sympathy. Not love, not regret, just sadness for two people who lost their way. He turned and walked away, the evening breeze warm on his face. And in that quiet moment he realized, this was the real revenge. Not the confrontation. Not the revelations. Not the consequences she now lived with. It was this. His complete freedom from her shadow. She remained trapped in the aftermath of her choices. He walked forward into a life no longer shaped by betrayal. His heart was no longer broken. It was simply new.